The truth is, you've been lied to in school. And what I mean by this is that making mistakes is seen as something bad, but in language learning and in learning new skills in life in general, you have to make mistakes and you have to fail to some extent in order to make progress and succeed eventually. And in this video, I'm going to break down the psychology behind why that happens and exactly what steps you can do to transfer your internal thinking from I'm not good at languages or I'm not a language learner to actually I'm capable of learning a different language and I'm going to do it and having confidence in your ability to learn a different language. I'm James. I'm a native English speaker. Puedo hablar español e anche posso parlare italiano. I help people reach their language goals in less time. So let's dive in. In school, we're taught to not make mistakes and you have to get as close to 100% correct as you can do. And especially when it comes to marking things and when teachers have like a class of 30, they have to be able to know which students are struggling and which aren't. And in order to do that, they have to assign a number based on their skill or how well they're doing. So that's normally graded. Now it depends how your grades were done in school, but imagine it's out of 100% maximum. Your goal is to get as close to that 100% as you can. However, the process of learning means that you have little exams or you have classwork or coursework to do, and they are graded. So every time you try and do something like grammatical exercises, you're graded on it. Now, this is great because teachers can see who might be struggling and who might be doing really well and getting top marks. However, in reality, if you're wanting to learn a different language and you're wanting to learn it for practical use, so like out and about, communicating with natives, connecting with people from different countries, then you don't need to be grammatically perfect. You just need to get the point across enough to be understood, gain proof to yourself that you can actually speak, and progress from there. So, at the start, or if you're early on in the journey, your goal isn't to be perfect. In fact, the more you try and aim for perfection, the more you'll put off things because you're trying to get perfect and you're just going to think, no, I'm not good enough for that yet. I'm not going to do it. So that's what will happen to many of you. But the internal voice you got from school was that you're not good at languages. Now, there might be a few reasons behind that, but the main reason is because if you were graded by some coursework you did or some answers you gave, and many of them were wrong, or you said the wrong thing, or you did something incorrectly, or you failed that exam, that would have made you feel bad and incapable of learning that language. However, just because you didn't get good grades in that thing, or in that way of assessment or assessing you, doesn't mean that you're bad at languages. It just meant that the way that the teacher was teaching you in that lesson was not according to how you learn best. Some people learn best just by talking and listening, whereas other people learn best by memorizing large bits of information and repeating that back on paper and getting 100%. But they, quite often, cannot have a conversation. So you can't really judge someone based on their exam results or grades at school and see how well they speak in real life. Because I've seen that many people who have studied languages at university or college can't have a full conversation. And they admit that, they're fine with that. And they're just a bit annoyed by it because they've paid this money to get a qualification in a different language, but they can't have a real conversation on the street. Or they can have a basic one, but then someone who hasn't formally studied that language can be more fluent or more confident about their abilities because they've learned in a different way. So it's very easy to let your performance in the school put you off from your performance right now that you're grown up. So ultimately, mistakes are part of the process, but school teaches you to not make mistakes. However, that's the wrong way of going about it if you want to get practical and actually be able to communicate with native speakers in real life. Also, it can be difficult to find out what your actual learning style is. For example, some people, as I mentioned, are better at conversations, and some people are better memorizing and studying grammar and the way in which words are constructed together. But back at school, you didn't really know how you learn languages best, and why should you? You've not really had a chance to experiment with the language yourself. You've not really learned a language yet, so how do you know the best way of learning a language? So that's the psychology behind it, and you felt bad about your experience at school, and you're bringing that now to this day and age where you can learn a language if you want to, but you feel like you can't because of how you did at school. So we need to rewrite that and basically build proof to yourself that you can do. And the first step in doing that is experiment with it. So learn a phrase or two, learn the basics, or even follow a script with a native speaker. But you have to practice to some extent with a native speaker in order to overwrite the past experience that you've had that you couldn't do it. So it may take a few repetitions of you trying to say the bill please or something, or can I have a table for four if you're on holiday where the language is spoken, or even on a language app. There's Tandem, there's Hello Talk, there's a lot of tandem language apps where you can exchange time, you can practice with a native speaker, and this can be either free or paid. But my point is, if you're able to practice with a native speaker, either talking or even typing, you can then get response from them, and it's a positive response. They understand what you're saying. And then your mind is thinking, wait a minute, I was told that I was wrong at school and I couldn't do it, but then this is new evidence, new proof that I can say a phrase or two to a native speaker and then replying back as I would expect them to. So I can't be that bad then if I can communicate with them. And if you're using pre-made phrases, you don't have to worry about the grammar. So if you say, how much is this? Or how is your day going? Just small talk like that. You don't need to know why it's how is your day going. You don't need to know why the words are structured in that way. You just say it. Make sure that you have a go at pronouncing the accent. Obviously, if your pronunciation is a bit off, that's fine. But most of the time, in the right context, the native speaker can sort of guess what you meant, even if your accent's a bit off. Or you might just have to say it a couple of times and they'll understand you eventually. But if you get understood, that means that you've been able to communicate with that native speaker. Now, this is just a YouTube video, but I do actually cover this in more detail in my Language Launchpad course, which is 5 different modules aimed at people very new to language learning, and it tells you how to learn any language in less time, like in weeks rather than months, in a more fun and enjoyable way around your current busy lifestyle. So it's designed for busy people, and it also comes with a Discord community, so an online based community on a social platform basically, where as you're watching the videos you can ask me and other community members any questions you have while you're watching the content, because with a lot of online courses you pay the fee and you get the course content, but then you can't really ask follow-up questions. But this one you can. So you pay the one-off fee and you get lifetime access to the course content and also the Discord channel community. Anyway, I'll put a link below in the description and comments so you can check it out. Finally, at school, you might not have been able to get on with the teacher well. And everyone knows that if you're trying to learn a new skill, the teacher is probably about 80% of the effectiveness of how well you're learning. So if you don't get on with the teacher, you're not going to learn. You can try and learn and read textbooks in your spare time, but you can't really get around the fact that when you're having a lesson or in school and you don't like the teacher, it's very, very hard to make progress because you won't feel comfortable learning with them. And also, you have to respect the person who's teaching you from a psychological perspective. If you respect the person, you'll pay more attention, you'll value what they're saying, and your mind is more likely to accept the new information. It's more likely to retain what you learn because it trusts that that source of information, the teacher, is true and valid. And that happens for a lot of different things. If a famous person who you respect comes and sits down with you for 10 minutes, you'll listen to every word that they say and it'll stick in your memory because you know you value this person, you respect them, and you know that everything they have to say is genuine and you'll remember it. And it's the same thing with teachers. So when you're at school, if you didn't quite get on with a teacher studying your certain language, then don't let that put you off learning the language today because you had a bad experience at school learning the language with a teacher you didn't get on well with. And they might be friendly, it's just their teaching style didn't match what you like to do, and as a result you might have been marked down and then didn't like the teacher, for example. So there could be several different nuances or ways in which you didn't like the teacher, not that they're a bad person, just you didn't quite get on with them. So don't let that put you off from what you're doing now. And the solution to that is trying to find opportunities to gain proof that you can actually be capable of communicating with different native speakers, even though your grammar is all over the place and you're not fluent at the moment. You have to start somewhere, and that's absolutely fine. But gradually, the more encounters you'll have with native speakers, the more you'll gain confidence, and that will override the negative experiences you've had in school. So any voices you have in your head saying, I can't learn language, I'm not capable, they will get quieter and quieter as you gain new evidence that actually I've had many conversations now with native speakers and I've been able to communicate with them, be understood, and I'm gradually getting better and better. And the new voice is that I am capable of learning a language. I am fine with making mistakes because I know that I get better as a result of trying. Anyway, that is a big blocker that many people tell me in terms of when they feel like they're not capable of learning a different language because of the bad experience or bad grades they got in school. Well, I do believe that everybody is capable of learning a different language because, for example, you learn your native language and that's one. And you have the same brain as you did when you were a baby, so why not just work with your brain rather than against it and understand how it learns a different language best? Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later.